Hi, and welcome to the Azure News Recap for March 2025. We'll look at announcements around retirements, general availability, and preview announcements. Starting off with retirements, here's a couple of interesting ones. So, Azure Spring Apps will be retired March 31st, 2028. We recommend you switch over to either Azure Container Apps or Azure Kubernetes Service as the alternative services to run your workload. Um, New customers will no longer be able to sign up for the service after March 17th, which is already past of this year because 2025. So existing customers will remain fully operational until the plans are phased out in March 2028. But now would be a good time to start exploring moving either to Azure Container Apps or Azure Kubernetes Service. Then, as far as virtual machines go, all the D, DS, DV2, DS V2, and LS series virtual machines are being retired May 1st, 2028. Now, May 1st is still more than 3 years away of that year in 2028. However, if you want to do a 3-year reservation of any of the virtual machines inside of these series, you would have to do so before May 1st of this year, because otherwise your reservation would run past the supported time frame for these virtual machine series. So if you're running or wanting to run the virtual machine series D, DS, DV2, DSV2, or LS, please take into account May 1st, 2028 is the retirement date, which means May 1st, 2025 is the last date you can get a 3-year reservation on these virtual machines. And May 1st, 2027 would be the last date you can get a 1-year reservation for VMs in these series. Then next up, SQL Server Connector V1 actions and triggers are being retired June 30th this year. And we recommend you transition over to the V2 actions and triggers. So again, retirement is extended now until June 30th. So it was supposed to be March 31st, but we got a little pushback. So it has now been extended to June 30th of this year. But on June 30th this year, they will actually stop being supported. So please have a look at V2. It's faster, it's more supported, it supports multiple authentication types. So please have a look at the V2 SQL Server actions and triggers. Next up, Docker Compose feature for Azure App Service is being replaced by sidecars in Azure App Service. The retirement date is March 31st, 2027. But with the sidecar pattern in App Service, you get an easier configuration system. You can fully manage and control each container separately because everything is integrated into the portal. And you get seamless integration with other features like VNet and managed identity that run on app services. So if you're using something like Docker Compose in combination with Azure App Service, please have a look at running sidecars on Azure App Service. Moving on to general availability, and I'm already warning you, there was a lot of announcements this month. I didn't catch all of them, but I have a few that are interesting. So first of all, we now have vaulted backup support for Azure Files standard shares, which means you get enhanced data protection, the ability to configure snapshot and vaulted backup in a single policy, and it offers cross-account and regional recovery. So the cool thing is that you get immutable backups or soft delete. You can have long-term retention in place so that you can go for compliance. So vaulted backup is actually a really good addition to the backup solutions we already had for storage. Next up, there was a lot of movement around Azure Database for PostgreSQL. So first of all, we now have the Data Connector V2 for Data Factory. We can now do on-demand backups for Azure Database for Postgres. And also we support extensions PG Repack from version 151, tdigest, PostgreSQL HSL, and the top-end extensions. All of those are now supported generally available, so no longer in preview. We now also have API management that you can have as a private link enabled origin for front door premium, which means you can now configure Azure API management resources as private link enabled origins in your front door premium profile. So private link enabled origins in front door allow you to deliver content to your end users through public front door endpoints while ensuring that your origins remain inaccessible to the public internet. Then we have AKS, control plane Azure platform metrics are now available. We have default ephemeral OS disk sizing, message of the day support, Azure Linux 3.0 support, and node auto repair on Kubernetes events. So a lot of work has gone into AKS as well. Something that I think is very interesting, serverless GPUs in Azure Container Apps with NVIDIA NIMS support. It enables you to seamlessly run your AI workloads on demand with automatic scaling, optimized cold starts, but also per second billing because you can do scale down to 0 and reduce operational overhead. So that's pretty powerful. And then next to that, we also have Azure load testing that actually now supports Locust. So Locust is a developer-friendly framework that lets you write code to create load tests as opposed to using GUI-based test creation like some other tools do. And when you create a load test, you can now select the load testing framework, and you now have the option of either choosing JMeter or doing a Locust. Next up is autoscale for vCore-based Azure Cosmos DB for MongoDB. So now we can handle peak loads effortlessly without over-provisioning your database. It's currently available for vCore-based Azure Cosmos DB for MongoDB. So have a look at that if you want to. Then what went into preview in the last month? We have point-in-time restore capability for multi-region write accounts in Azure Cosmos DB. So you can now create or enable point-in-time restore for multi-region write accounts on Cosmos DB, which is pretty powerful. Next up, Azure Database for MySQL triggers for Azure Functions. So we now have triggers that run for Azure Database for MySQL as well. They enable change tracking. So now you can develop event-driven applications at scale, and that looks something like this. So we here see a piece of C# code for an Azure function. In this case, there's a MySQL trigger attribute that opens the parameter list on the run function, a run method. And as you can see, the MySQL trigger takes a table name and the name of a connection string setting name. So the name of the setting in which you store the connection string to your MySQL. Of course, you can also do this using managed identity. And then, for instance, you can get an iRead-only list of MySQL changes of a specific entity. So that entity would be the entity type that's stored in that table. And then you can add your own awesome code that goes into the body of this function that actually processes the events as they come in. So any record that has been created, updated, or deleted will automatically fall into a list of changes that flows into this function in this case, really allowing for you to build event-driven applications based on what happens in your MySQL database. So that's it for now. Like I already said, there's been a lot of announcements in the last month. I've only picked a few in which I think that those are interesting for the people watching this video. If you're interested in more, go azure.com/updates. You will see a list of all of the updates. You can filter on product, on if it's either in development, in preview, or general availability. You can have a look at the timeframes. And most of the times you also have the possibility of clicking through to a next, more broader set of information or documentation on the specific types. For now, this is it for me. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.